So this axiomatic disgust is built in to how the economia, the living organism of civilization, of civilized people, a culture will respond. Whether it's the oligarchs or the banking loan or the selling off the country, the crown jewels, creates the pool of money, or whether it's a pool of heavy taxes. You know, either way, the people are squeezed in the middle. They don't get a great deal of benefit, except, you know, as servants to, you know, the businesses that make the money for, or as, you know, subject clients of, you know, the pool of money for the tax takers, and this small group here is very intense, and probably the majority of people actually, but they don't get much at all. I'm paying more taxes now, I'm getting less service, for instance. Once upon a time we paid far less taxes. You know, probably less than half what I pay now. Less than half, less than 2/3 less, I say. And in those days I would have had free health and free education. I get none of those things now, they're not free. I daren't get sick, I daren't go to a doctor, I daren't want to have an operation. It costs too much. You know, life goes on, things have to be paid for, and the state doesn't provide what it says it's going to provide. The queues get longer, the people die more often, they die for quite ordinary things. You know, they just get put off and put off and put. So who's making the money? The public servants themselves and their Quango empires. And who's making the money on the other side? The people who betray the country. They don't care for New Zealand. They care for making money. And they can locate that money making anywhere in the world. So we're going to have to go after them, you see, because they'll be located, translocated somewhere else when the time for justice comes. So we'll have to go and collect them, willing or not, perhaps. And unfortunately I see that because my reason is the reason for why all this has occurred, why the great downgrade has happened in the West, the great crisis that is upon us, is because of sterilisation, contraception and abortion. We just aren't having enough children in our world anymore. Once upon a time the European peoples were 20% of the human race. 1 in every 5 persons was a European person. Now that proportion is 8%, and Europe itself is being engulfed and taken over bit by bit by Arab peoples and others, Turks in some cases, and people from the Middle East and Africa and so on, from North Africa. So this war that NATO is now having with Libya is a kind of a foolish gesture, a sort of a waving of the hand kind of gesture in the way of fobbing off this threat. There's nothing going to stop a tide of population. Population is bigger than history. It's bigger than politics. It's bigger than regimes. It's bigger than kings. It's bigger than republics. It's bigger than presidents. It's bigger than military tyrants. It's bigger than Genghis Khan. It's bigger than Hannibal. It's bigger than Caesar. It's bigger than any American president. It will roll over America, and America will be impoverished, poverty-stricken and Spanish-speaking Catholic country in about 10 years' time because of population. We have been murdering our children, and despite policies elsewhere in the world, they haven't yet caught up historically, because it takes time before the downside of that ferocious murder occurs. It takes a generation, it takes 40 years, it takes, because the children that we supposedly save the money from by not having them, that money would have been paid back within 18 months, 2 years, 3 years at most, of their first onset of working life. On average. That's counting the ones who don't work, the cripples and so on. And of course counting the ones who spectacularly work, who spectacularly perform, who have fantastic ideas. So on average, you cannot fail with people. But if you don't have them, you will fail. And Russia has fallen because of that. And America is falling now because of that. And New Zealand also. A little belatedly, perhaps we just keep our fluffy Pacific clouded utopian delusions alive a bit longer. We have murdered our own future. We have murdered our children. Tojo and Pol Pot and Mao Zedong and all those bloodthirsty thugs throughout history. Genghis Khan and Hannibal and Carthage and Rome and slavery and Joseph Stalin and Adolf Hitler. They have not done as much damage to us as these furiously evil people have done in 30 or 40 years. What was the death toll amongst American, New Zealand soldiers in the Second World War? 10, 12, 20, 15,000, 20,000 or something like that. We have lost 450,000 people. 450,000. It's almost 500,000 people that we have murdered when they were most safe, most sacred, most pure, most innocent. And we have slaughtered them there like dogs. And now we pay the price. We do pay the price. We have done it ourselves. We have done for ourselves by ourselves. And we shall pay that price. So help me God, we will pay that price. 500,000 people in 30 or 40 years. 500,000 people. And the children that those children would have had or begun to have by now. Over the next 30 or 40 years, that's another half or more. 600,000 added to the first 500,000. Over 1,000,000 people over the next 30 years. And the children they did not have over those 30 years would be another 500,000.